What is the worst possible sailboat that you could buy right now to go cruising? The worst investment, the worst sailing boat in general. And I know a lot of you guys are screaming at the TV right now, probably McGregor or Hunter, but wait. There's one on the market right now that people are actually sailing in the Caribbean as we speak, that on the surface looks like an affordable solution to living on a sailboat in paradise, but it's not. This week on Everything You Need to Know, the worst affordable cruising sailboat you can buy today. First, let me address those of you screaming at the TV, the McGregor. They make a weird boat, and most of us know what it is. It's a sailboat and a power boat. It usually has 60 horses standing on the back of its awkward, hard-chined, bathtub-shaped hull. It has a dinky little mast, a swing keel, and often water ballast, whatever that is. It's not a very good sailing boat, and it's not a very good motorboat either, but it serves a purpose. This ugly little duckling gets people into sailing. No one else makes anything like this, and McGregor just wouldn't seem to let it go. But this boat makes sense for people who won't commit to a full-on sailing boat, but want some of the magic. People that want to pull a water skier behind their sailboat. People who want to beach their boat from time to time and generally operate in extremely shallow conditions, or people who've become a little bit enlightened and want to transition from power boats to sailboats. And I don't think we can fault them. That's what this is for. And honestly, it needs to exist. So we have to stop picking on it for a minute. Moving on. For those of you who've been shopping for a sub-$100,000 boat to go live on, at least part of the time, sail the tropics, and truly enjoy just living in paradise, there is a boat that comes up in the search from time to time, and some people buy them and go cruising on them. I've been on 3 of them, and on the surface, they too make a lot of sense. And here's an example of what I'm talking about. This is Irwin. And I've been told more than once by more than one old salt sailor that friends don't let friends buy Irwin. So what's that all about? Let's check this one out so that I can explain a little bit. It looks like a pointy bathtub, but looks weren't what Irwin was going for when they built this one back in 1987. The owner is asking almost 90 grand for this thing, which is like legend 40.5 money. So let's see why people might buy these. This one's obviously been around, and it's interesting in this picture to see how he has the dinghy on the deck where it wouldn't otherwise fit, but he has it sort of levitating with a halyard for some reason as he motor sails with just the jib out. Here he is motor sailing again with just one sail up, and we'll get to see why he's doing that in a minute. This 38-footer weighs a whopping 20,000 pounds from the factory, so while she isn't much to look at, she is quite heavy for her size, which usually translates into a lot of comfort, a theme with Irwin yachts. But this is where things get a bit weird. These Irwin boats have a huge amount of deck space. They boast that, where you can run around and easily traverse from front to back with wide side decks, and everything is very flat. But Irwin was known for a long time for less than stellar building practices, including bedding down the deck hardware. They would simply screw things into the deck and hope the water didn't get in, which of course it did. And because everything is wide open and flat with a big coaming, water would just collect on the deck and make its way into any hole it could find to rot the deck core. This particular Irwin looks to be in fairly good shape in these pictures, but the first thing I would want to do is take a moisture meter to all the flat surfaces. Everything is going to be suspect on this boat. Everywhere there's a screw hole, a hatch, a winch, which brings me to another complaint in the fairly long list people have against Irwin. At least the stanchion bases aren't screwed into the glass, right? So it's one more place for the glass to leak. But instead they're screwed in and all anchored into the wood tow rail, and people complain about this problem a lot. Irwin loves screwing things into that wooden rail, which of course rots very slowly over time and becomes softer over the years. And when you're just going to almost fall out of this boat in bad conditions, hoping that those lifelines will save you, you'll be praying that the screws holding the stanchions to the wood are going to hold. This Irwin looks great in these pictures, though, not like the earlier one where you could literally see through the deck glasswork right from the factory. That was a problem. You could see through the decks on the early Irwins. They've reupholstered this boat, and I like it. The living area looks fresh, albeit a big problem with Irwins is that it's very small. And what you're paying for with a boat like this is sort of the interior living space. Now, Irwin sold a lot of these things to charter companies, closely following in Morgan's footsteps with their wildly successful Out Island boats. But Morgan Out Islands were better made. You couldn't see through the fiberglass work, and they didn't screw things down to a wooden tow rail. Let's look at another Irwin for comparison's sake. This is the big brother. The 43-footer, and this seller is asking 60 grand. Sounds good for a 43-footer, and it's a 1988. Again, center cockpit, as Irwin does, but this boat shows to be in a little bit worse condition in the pictures. The main saloon, again, very tight. From what I've read also is that one settee is too narrow to sleep on, while the other one is too short. So there's no seagoing berths. And everything is on different levels. You step down to the galley, down to the forward berth, 2 steps down to the aft cabin, up to the main saloon. And all Irwins seem to lack handholds and grab rails and reasonable fiddles to stop you falling over when you try to navigate this unlevel interior at sea. And at sea is where things get really bad for these boats. Every review on Irwin yachts points out that they are not particularly good sailors. They won't point. There's too much windage from the massive sides of the hull. And the ones that came with a catch rig, which has a second mast, barely added enough sail area to account for the added windage of the second mast itself. All the catch versions of these boats do is get in the way of putting an arch on the back to hold the solar panels. So these boats are known to sail fairly poorly, to be built very poorly, and don't sell very well, because if you Google Irwin sailboat problems, you'll be reading for a couple hours. But that's not to say it's all bad. There are 2 sides to every story. The mission here at Lady K Sailing has always been to get more people sailing more easily, and I couldn't do it without the help of the patrons, people who give a couple of bucks an episode to make these videos possible. A big shout out to all the existing patrons who have gotten us this far. If you'd like to help out, please consider becoming a patron. So what's the good on these older bathtubs? Well, you won't be getting anywhere in a hurry. You better get used to rebedding hardware and fixing leaky everything and be a whiz with the fiberglass. But what you get is a fairly livable back bedroom, a small front bedroom for some short people, 2 heads, and a center cockpit to keep you in the boat and out of the weather. You also get a very heavy boat for its size. All Irwins are like that. They love making very heavy boats because comfort first, sailboats second. And that's why you'll usually see an Irwin motor sailing. They're pretty good at that. They give you tons of headroom, and you can run all the lines to the cockpit and put up an enclosure and motor sail through whatever weather that you want. But they're old, and they should be cheaper, and some of them are. You can find the 37 and 38 for 30 grand sometimes, but I would suggest buying a moisture meter. Blistering hulls and soft decks are what's going to kill these boats off. And if you buy one, you better believe you're going to be having a hard time selling it later. I've seen these things sit on the market for years, even a good one. It all begs a bigger question. Are these 80s boats just dead in the water at this point? Is no one going to buy them anymore? And are they even worth it? Or should we just start cutting them up and selling off the lead? I genuinely don't think so. There is a place in cruising for these old battle axes, and it's entry-level, beginner cruisers with more effort available than money. Kids who want to go out on an adventure while they're still young, late 20s, early 30s, they should have these boats because They have the energy to do the work to keep these boats going safely. The electrical, the glasswork, the plumbing. That's who these boats should be for. Which brings me to the whole point. 80 grand? No. 60? Still no. These should be less than 50, and I'm thinking more like 20 or 30 for a reasonably good one. Sell them to the kid adventurers so they can go sailing. And if you want a big old bathtub of a center cockpit because it's just your thing, there's another very big problem with Irwin that you should be aware of. And it's this. A Morgan Out Island 41 for 40 grand. It's in better shape than the Irwins we looked at. It's heavier, it's better made, it's more comfortable, and somehow it's slightly less ugly. And all that, and it's cheaper. It just makes Irwin make a lot less sense. If you're boat shopping right now and you need help and want to book an hour of my time, head over to ladyksailing.com/consults. I'd love to hear from you, and please, below in the comments, let me know what you'd buy for less than 100 grand. Maybe we can narrow it down to the top 4 or 5 boats that make the most sense to the most people. Let's help get more people sailing. Until next week, friends, keep the heavy side down, but not too far down. I love you guys. We'll see ya.